Hey everybody, this is Julie. I wanted to do a quick video to show you how to build an educational body paragraph just in draft form of your plan paper. Now you're going to be doing a lot of research this weekend and you're gathering a ton of notes and you're probably wondering, how do I take those notes and make them into a body paragraph? So I'm going to show you what I did with my other class, my other 111 ENF3, and we can build upon the research idea. So you can see that right now on the screen, I've got the modules open, and within the educational links folder are your advising sheets. I imagine most students will be using the advising sheets, but maybe there's like a pathways transfer plan you wanted to use instead because you're doing the pathways program. That's fine. Whatever you use, as long as it's NOVA specific or a school specific document that can help you map this educational section, by all means. So what I did with my students was I went to the liberal arts one, and I'll toggle back and forth to this. And the first thing I did was I told the class, I said, hey, so take a look at the advising sheet or the pathways plan for your major or your certificate and see if you can find anything interesting that stands out, because you don't have to repeat every question. What you have to do, or every class, excuse me. But what you have to do is you have to be able to see if you can find something that stands out within the different types of classes that are listed, the volume of a specific course, a sequence of classes, what have you. And what I noticed when I was looking through this, imagine I'm doing the liberal arts to become a teacher, okay? So I noticed that what was listed at the very top were the languages, and if you already have the languages, then of course you can do a general education elective. At the 100 level, I noticed that even in liberal arts, you have to have the physical sciences like biology. I noticed that there were some social science, so it's still extremely general in its design. And that was unique and interesting to me, that even with the liberal arts, there was such a wide variety of classes that somebody takes for this associate's degree. So I put that into, and I wrote this with my students in class, and we did a 15-minute writing exercise. And so during your homework period between now and Monday, try this, bring this to class. So this is what I wrote, and this is still a draft, but let me share this with you. According to NOVA's advising sheet, liberal arts AA, I have to take approximately 60 to 62 hours of course credits to get my associate's degree. So if we go back to the advising sheet, you can see at the very bottom here, it said total credits are 60 to 62 hours, I guess just depending on probably what foreign language you need to take. And be reminded that this is also dependent upon no other prerequisites. So you have to add the 2 hours of ENF and then any like MTT hours, or if you prior did ESL, right? So that was my first bit of detail, but I paraphrased this. So I wrote this in my own words. I took some notes on what the sheet said, and I decided to put in the paragraph some of what I thought stood out. And I said, some of the required courses within this degree are actually not liberal arts courses. And what I mean by that is they're not all humanities, all art, all music, all creative writing. For example, then I provide a specific example. I'm illustrating right now. I'm going from general to specific. I must take Intro to Communications, which is CST 110, College Composition 1 and 2, and Quantitative Reasoning. So I'm showing some range in classes that are outside of the arts. Okay, and I said that as part of my degree process, luckily. Now here's my sort of putting it into context. I also have the option to take a series of electives in world languages, physical sciences, and the humanities to round up my AA experience. So this is a start. This paragraph is less than 100 words long, but what it does is it establishes my understanding of what the advising sheet is telling me to do. So again, you're not repeating every single class, but what you can do is, and you don't have to focus on the same things I did. Say, for example, your advising sheet's the engineering technology or engineering associate of science, and you talk about there are so many math classes, or there are interesting classes in thermodynamics, and you want to focus on that, but go for it. But this is what I noticed that lets me know a little bit more about my major. And then I added a second paragraph as my students were writing. I said, I'm particularly interested in the 200 level literature requirements that are part of the major. The advising sheet shows that I can take any 200 level English class that is a literature. So when you go back to the advising sheet, you'll see English literature elective. And do you see this little footnote here? you go down to footnote number 5, just any 200 level literature course within the English prefixes that satisfies this requirement. But the interesting thing is, if you go to Nova website and course content summaries, what you're going to find in here is that when you click on the Englishes, and I do recommend this because this gives you detail on any specific class. I would search Nova course content summary. I did not put this in the educational materials because this is now, you have to sort of show some initiative, but I'm at least giving you a hint about it. English, you'll notice some of these classes say introduction to the short story. They don't specifically say literature. One says introduction to poetry. Some are on journalism. So there are 200 level classes, but they don't specifically state anything with literature in their title. And so you have to possibly talk to somebody to make sure you're choosing the right classes. The advising sheet won't tell you everything. It says, but it doesn't differentiate between the 200s that are and are not literature. This can get confusing, so conferring with an advisor would be recommended. For example, many literature offerings don't have literature in the title, like major writers. I referred to the course content summaries found on the website for the 200 level English classes and determined that I'm interested primarily in English 256, the literature of science fiction. In that class, we will cover the ages of science fiction, as I'm especially interested in science fiction and pulp. So, figuring out what that class provides as far as content, you just click on the title of the course. And so, hey, I'm going to play it safe and choose a class with literature in the title. So I know I don't have to worry about it. And then you can skim through this. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. And see if anything pops out and stands out. So far, in the building of throwing my ideas on the page, I've used everything highlighted in yellow is a naming of the source. Nova's advising sheet, liberal arts AA. I show in this paragraph where I begin the borrowing, and I show where I end the borrowing. In the next paragraph, I don't have to name it in full. I've already named it, but I still signal I'm still using data from the advising sheet. And then I move on to course content summaries and provide a little bit more detail, because you may end up having 2 Nova sources that go to that course content summary for 256, and then maybe one for CST 110 or 115. So what you've got here in the sample and in the announcement, I'm going to attach this file so you can see it in a little bit more depth. As you see the beginnings of body paragraphs just related to Nova. Now, you can also go and look at the student essay samples to see how students have covered Nova information in depth if they're only getting associates, or some Nova, some VCU if they plan on transferring. Every student does this a little bit differently. And now it's on you to take a look at some of my drafting here, some of those student samples, as you work with your data to see, how do I take these numbers and this information and make it prose? Making it prose means putting it in a paragraph, because this paper is a plan, but it's also a discussion. It's a conversation with readers about one way to become a teacher in my example, or one way to become an engineer, one way to become a mathematician. So the final thing I did with my class is I went and built a works cited and a reference entry as early practice for how do you document the sources. Part of the documentation that you have to do is you have to name your source, and that's what's highlighted in yellow. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little note here. MLA is EasyBib.com. APA is citationmachine.net. We opened those websites and we took the URL, the web address, from the advising sheet and from the course content summary, and I built one of each just for my students as an example to show that every source you name in the body, you also have an accompanying reference. So here's an example of one of each. You don't have to do both. Remember, choose your style. MLA is the works cited, so I'll just say this is MLA as a refresher. Reference is APA style. Most of the same information is collected between this one and this one. It's just the layout's different. What I will show you on Monday is, if you go into either of these, notice that PDFs equal an image, right? So the course content summary is a PDF. The system cannot pull PDFs, like information out of a PDF. So let me go to EasyBib and show you. I'll just do a quick MLA one. And I'm going to take this URL, this is that web address, and we are going to go into EasyBib and we're going to create like our works cited. We know it's from website content. So you just paste the URL, and then you have a couple of clicks, and then you get to this. See, it didn't pull up any of the information because it was an image. So you have to go in and find it. So I would say for this one, it's the course content summary, Nova College-wide course content summary. And I wouldn't do it in all caps, though. I would just do it in title case. So if it doesn't pull it up, and then sometimes if it is a website, not a PDF, it will weirdly just say, welcome to Nova as the title. So you have to double check these websites. But the great thing about them is they help you choose the format. Now, for contributors, it's an author and it's Nova. They don't have a first name for Nova. You can use the acronym. Website title, just repeat Nova. The URL was this address. And the copyright date, it said revised on 2008. So that's what I would just use, 2008. So my recommendation for doing this now and for not doing it later is the fact that you may forget, right? Notice as well that it says view a sponsored image. This is the free version, so take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to put on the sponsored image, and it's going to be on mute. So this is going to be kind of running around in the background. The video is on hair dryers, or who cares. It has 20-some seconds, so we're just going to jump back away from that. So if you're in English, or if you're in history, choose this. If you're in the sciences, choose this. And this is what your sources should look like. Every source named in the body will have an accompanying reference or works cited entry. And you'll notice I didn't cut and paste anything in here. I mean, I put a title in quotes of a class. But the most important thing you can do right now is to show concept mastery. What concept mastery means is show how you understand the data that you're borrowing. So we're going to be practicing in paraphrase right now. Next week, we'll fold in some quoting. So what I'd like to see you bring to class on Monday is some educational body paragraphs, because the more you have written, the easier it's going to be to get feedback from me and to then start to write some of the finance section, because that's going to look a little bit different than education. But the more of the paper you've got written in advance, the better off you're going to feel. So let's see if I was able to get out. Okay. Let's see. I'm done. Now you'll see that we should get a reference. Here it is. So that's what I ended up doing. I'm copying that citation. And then I went into the sample. And then I just pasted it. And of course, I made the font really big so everybody could see this, right? But that's what I did. You'll notice that honestly, the building of that works cited entry took less than a minute. It's really important to do this as you go. Practice this before class next week. Class next week is week 6. So practice this then. And if you have any questions about those body paragraphs, throw them into the Q&A before Friday afternoon, and I can actually give you feedback on that. Okay? I wish you great luck this week. Reach out if you have questions. Take care.